Welcome everybody to our next installment of our Rubin virtual internship series. My name is Danny Rubin. I'm the founder of the company, and we teach students effective communication skills. Teachers, especially the new teachers, raise your hand if your students ever send you emails that look like text messages. Any hands for that? Emails like texting. So one of the skills that we tackle is teaching students how to communicate professionally for college and career opportunities. And one way we do that is to learn effective communication through various different occupations. And today is an exciting topic that we've covered in the past, but we have a great new guest today, the world of entrepreneurship, with a special guest, Jennifer Strout, who will be joining us momentarily for her fitness app, MotivateU. Very excited to have her here. We have Mac Dow from the Rubin team. Mac will be hanging out in the chat, answering questions as we go, so you can do that now. And of course, Kelly Greer providing sign language services. Before we dive into our conversation, as many of you who've come before know, we love to give out free resources. We have one that we haven't given out in a while, but we're going to bring it back for those who don't have it yet. We want to give you some free lessons to take from today into the classroom. Raise your hand if you intend to help students this spring with job interview skills. Any hands up for job interview, internship opportunities, career fairs? Great. So we'd love to give you a Google Drive folder of free exercises that give students some innovative ways to approach job interviews, like how to research a company thoroughly before the interview, how to request an informational interview out of the clear blue sky through email. What do you say in that message? The smartest questions to ask in the interview when they say, do you have questions for me? How many of you believe you should always have questions to ask? You shouldn't just say, oh, I have no questions, you answered everything. We want to have great questions, insightful questions, how to answer any of their questions with one key technique called storytelling, and how to write a great thank you note afterwards. We'd love to give anybody, any instructor, these resources, and I'll explain how to do that in just a moment. We also always give out this document, if you don't have it yet, a free online presentation checklist, how to prepare for the presentation, what to do before you speak and as you deliver, some quick advice, some quick reminders on how to look your best. Do we have any online presentations coming up the rest of the year through class or through competition, perhaps? So we want you to be ready and make the most of those moments. If you would like these resources for the teachers among us today, go to the chat right now, please. Type the word interested and your email address. Interested and your email address. And we will email you with a time to connect. What we love to do is have a 5-minute conversation in your flow of your day to give you out the resources and help you make the most of them with your students and with your department, okay, with your CTE program. So if you're saying interested, which we appreciate, look out on your calendar this afternoon for a invite from us for 5 minutes. If the time is not good, you can suggest a new time and we will chat briefly, pass it along, and you can continue these lessons in your classroom as soon as tomorrow. Okay, so thank you very much for doing that. And if you continue to do so, I'm going to move through our remaining slides and then get to our special guest. And we'll bring it up again at the end for those who came a little late. Also, as you know, if you've come before, we always have another one. And our next session is going to be super cool too. The world of sports executives on Tuesday, April 5th. Students, any students, show of hands if you want to work in sports one day. We're going to have two gentlemen, one from the San Francisco Giants baseball team and one from the Portland Trailblazers basketball team. And you'll notice Scott Zumsteg right here. Guess what? He was part of a team that won a World Series, posed with the trophy. This is as high as it gets. And they're going to talk about how they got in those jobs, what they do in their jobs, and how they work in professional sports. And as they say, the back office. And finally, everyone today who's with us live will receive a certificate for being here. And you'll get that in your email tomorrow. Teachers, you can put the student's name on the certificate one at a time and give it out. And it's great for a portfolio or to put up in the classroom. Okay. And finally, if you're watching on a recording, many teachers do, you can also have our resources for job interview. Just send us an email to the email in red with the subject line below, and we'll get it to you that way. All right. Now, let's hop back out of the screen share. And I will turn to our special guest, Ms. Jennifer Strout. Thank you for your time. I know you're very busy. You're kind of in between appointments today, so thank you for that. So start off by telling us what you're doing now, what the app is all about, what the program's all about, and also just how you kind of got to this spot in your career. What led you to become an entrepreneur?
Okay, that's a lot of questions and a long answer, but
You can give a short bio. We'll get into it more. Just give us kind of the shorthand of how you got here, and we'll dig in deeper.
Okay, the CEO and founder of MotivateU. So we are primarily an enterprise SaaS product. SaaS is subscription as a service or software as a service. And we also have consumer versions of the app as well. We have a patent pending for the motion tracking synchronization. That's the underlying core piece of the technology. In terms of how I got here, it's been a long road and it's not a very linear path. This is the fourth business that I've started, but I went to Bucknell University for philosophy and psychology, and then I got my graduate degree in counseling, and I worked in hospital emergency departments doing crisis counseling. But I had started my first business when I was in grad school and kept it going over that time.
Okay.
So this is my first tech startup, though, so to speak.
Okay. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to share my screen again one more time. And I have, let me make sure the screen's going to come up right when I want it to. I have your site pulled up, and I was trying to learn more about the tool myself before the conversation. And so I want to, and for those who are new, the instructors who are new, we use these sessions to not just learn about different jobs and what people do, but also to learn about employability skills. How many of you teach employability skills, college and career readiness skills in your classes, in your CTE perhaps? So we're going to talk about those people skills as well as the work. So I'm on the site, and you already used one of the terms that I wanted to learn more about. One of them is this term, this two-way live, where did that term, the integrated two-way live stream. I want to learn about that. And I want to learn about the motion tracking too. So give us an example of a customer and how they use these types of features with your platform.
So two-way live streaming is anything that's just like the live video, like Zoom is an example of a two-way live stream. So we embed our motion tracking in there. So if a Jen was hosting a class, they could host it both live and virtually at the same time. So the trainer would set up the camera, which could be on their phone. They basically just need a cell phone, an iPad, a tablet, or a computer. They just put it in front of them and run their class. From there, the people at home would also then set up their whatever mobile device they choose to use and do the movements and synchronization with the trainer, just as if you were taking a live class. But our technology will tell you in real time whether or not you're doing the exercise correctly. And we use a color coding system. So it's either red, yellow, or green, like a stoplight with green being good. And it's also down to a single digit %. And then you get your results at the end as well. But it helps the trainer to know if they have a remote class who they need to focus on, because they could just give instructions to the people who are in red as opposed to trying to look at the entire class. Hold on a second.
No problem. She's got a child in the room. So what I'm about to do as she deals with that, we talk a lot in our sessions about the importance of follow-up questions. Who's heard me talk before about follow-up questions? Anybody heard me in these sessions before? We always say, if something interests you, even in an interview for an internship or a job, if you want to learn more about something, is it okay to ask a follow-up question? What do you think in the chat? Is it okay to ask a follow-up question about something you want to know more about? Would that make you look inquisitive or annoying? Tell me what you think, and hopefully she'll return in a live webinar. What I'm going to ask her, this is a first. What I'm going to ask her is when the trainer sees a red, yellow, green on the screen, how do we know, how does the system know that? I hope she realizes this is a live session, and we'll wait for the answer. But the point is, and thank you for responding to my question, it is important and it is okay to ask follow-up questions. And in addition to that, notice what I did. I prepared with research. I was on the site, I read through it, I had questions about it. Do you also think that would look impressive when you go to an interview and you see, and you're ready with questions about their company? Do you think the employer would like that? Would like to see that you've come in with your own thoughts about the business? So this is what we want to teach in our sessions, especially in moments like this, where we want to learn how to think on our feet or come in with a plan. Because you notice in these sessions, and actually let me give you something else to work on as we wait. Go to the Q&A right now, and I want you to start putting in your questions. Put in your questions for our guests, or just entrepreneurship generally, and we'll do our best to get them answered. So let's use this time to start asking our questions. Go to the Q&A along the bottom row of Zoom, okay? And we'll start to ask your questions. Are you back, Jennifer?
We'll see.
Okay, just remember, this is a live webinar, so if you can stay.
I understand, but it's also live life. And unfortunately, my kids are having a bad day, and I can't have a nanny when my kids are sick, because if somebody's sick, you're not, it's the pandemic.
Yes, I understand.
I'm sorry.
We appreciate your time, and we'll get you out of here as quickly as we can. The students are going to start putting their questions for you. So we'll start asking them as they come through the Q&A. And let's just get into the guts of the business for a second. Like you said, you're a software as a service model, right? So how do you sort of sell it? What does that look like to the customer? How does that work? What is your business structure?
So we're primarily selling to businesses.
Okay.
I don't know how much detail you want from there.
As much as possible. Tell us, like, how does it work? Is it based on the number of coaches or rooms, or how does it work? How do you market it?
There's admin pricing, coaching pricing, and then client pricing.
Okay. So, and what are the pricing tiers, or so how did you come to those prices? Did you look at competitors? How did you determine like how to sell it?
Yeah, so some of it had to do with competitors, some of it had to do with user interviews, which even though it's called user interviews, Harvard has a great article on this, it doesn't mean they actually have to be a user first. So our first user interviews started before the company was even incorporated. It's just basically a term for anybody who could be a user in the future.
Sure.
That's in that niche. So that's how we determine pricing.
Sure. And just like getting started at all, did you have to build a prototype? Did you have to have like a company test it out for you just to tell you if they liked it before you really went hard and built it out? Like, think back to those early moments when you were just getting it going. What did that look like? How did you get the project started?
So first step was the user interviews. Second step was patent lawyer.
Oh,
and then building out the technology. It wasn't clear if it was going to be able to be done yet, because even now, today, all the existing technology is comparing movements to a library of predetermined poses. And so they're restricted in what they can do. And ours does not do that. We're comparing two live objects to each other, which is what the patent's on. And so up until April of last year, when we proved the technology, didn't know if it was going to work. We had to see if we could make it work. Of course, a lot of people told us it wouldn't work, which is why people hadn't tried to do it themselves, right? It's kind of what happens.
This is explain to the students what it means to get a patent. And is the patent related to the motion tracking?
Yes.
Okay, so explain what that means to have a patent and what you had to do to sort of own the right to do that.
So it's patent pending now. It takes quite a while for the process to go through. It could take years, but I got a certification through the US Patent Office to file it on my own. So I did all of the research that I needed to do and make sure there was no other people doing this type of technology. But that meant like sifting through like over 33,000 records of somewhat related stuff where like certain keywords would come up. Software in general is very hard to patent. So I ended up getting a patent attorney. But I wrote up everything like myself, and that since I took that course they offered, and then I went ahead and handed it over to an attorney and worked with them, which helped reduce the cost a little bit, as opposed to having them start with me from the very beginning.
So what is the patent, the exact language in the patent pending? What does it say that you're trying to sort of, patent? What is the exact terminology for you, like for the motion tracking?
Well, it's pretty long, but I think it's I don't know if it's 60 pages or so, but
Whoa.
with the figures and everything. But I believe in August of this upcoming year, it'll be public.
Okay.
So
I see.
we filed a provisional in August of 2020. We filed the final patent in the following August. And then a year after the final one, it becomes public. So then anybody could read it.
I see.
But we would like to keep that little extra gap because again, we want to get to market and get enough of the market faster than other people can. And obviously, even if it's public, they can't take it technically. Other companies can't take it. But there's a famous phrase that says your patent is only as good as your ability to prosecute against it, which means if you don't have the money to take a large corporation to court, you can't, but you can backwards do it. So a lot of small companies will end up, moving ahead and then 5-7 years later end up backwards prosecuting because that's when they finally have the money. The problem is if other big companies take you out of the market altogether before you get to that 5-7 year mark.
Wow. And we're really diving into the real world of entrepreneurship, especially when you're trying to patent or to own a part of the process or a process itself or a piece of technology. We're really hearing from her what it is to kind of go into that world. So I think that you're giving us a good look at a sort of a day in the life. I want to go to a couple of our questions from our guests. We have Robbie Garnett. He said, how did you go about outsourcing someone to make an app for you or make the technology for you? What was that like? How did you find people to help you?
So I didn't outsource anything. Everything's through the team. But my grandfather passed away about 8 years ago. But after I graduated from Bucknell, I had used LinkedIn and I connected to people that he used to work with. So my grandfather was a manager at Apple. And I ended up having still on my LinkedIn people that I remembered from when I was like 15, right? So there's 2 people on my advisory board that my grandfather managed 30 years ago at Apple. And
wow.
Again, my grandfather had already passed away when I reached out to these people, but he always taught me that you have to ask, like never be afraid to ask because otherwise the answer is no, right? Mm-hmm. And so I reached out. I was like, hey, I don't know if you remember me. This is my grandfather. You guys used to work at Apple. You'd come to our holiday parties every year. And that's how that got going. And then from there, I just kept branching out because the more I'd ask people, the more they were willing to help. And when I was seeing that people in big positions and that had worked at lots of companies were liked what I was doing and wanted to work on the team, it just made it easier and easier to ask the next group of people and kind of snowballed from there.
I love that. I love that quote. Raise your hand if you like that quote. If you don't ask for something, the answer is always no. Raise your hand if you like that quote. I like that quote. There's nothing wrong with asking politely for opportunities. And that's what she did to get herself from step to step to step. Now she has, a working product. And who's on your team? Tell us the makeup of your team. What does that look like today?
So on the advisory board, there's a 2-time VP of Salesforce. I have another person who's got a PhD in computer science, who's also a part-time professor in machine learning. I have somebody who's a mechanical engineer who works with green technology. Let's see who else. I have somebody I used to work with the hospital with. She does ops and HR related stuff. And then I have another person who's one of those famous hackathon winners. He's beat teams of several people at Harvard, him against them. So he's well known for solving very difficult problems.
Wow.
So those are most of the key players. And then we have some part-time people.
So are those people that you would consider to be contractors or mentors, but you have full-time, are you the full-time employee? Do you have?
I have 2 full-time employees.
Okay. And what do they do day to day?
The rest are part-time. So the one is our lead developer.
Okay, I see. So and the developers are full-time. Okay. Yeah. a good question here from Kristen Thomas. Thank you, Kristen. How did you reach out to other businesses to acquire them as clients? How did that happen?
So in the beginning, I got really lucky because I got a lot of inbound leads, like organic leads, just from talking on social media. And then some of it's referrals, and then the rest of it is cold outreach. Actually, really works.
All right, we recognize the world has changed, and we're all working at home. So sometimes our kids are in the mix. Go ahead, you're back.
There'll probably be some background noise, but that's pretty much it. Was organic reach. Then the next big stage was referrals, and then cold outreach. Part of what happened with the organic reach is I stopped doing the things that had gotten me that organic reach, was spending lots of time on social media and just kind of posting about what we were doing. I got so busy that I spent less time doing that. And so the organic referrals went down. And so I'm trying to pick it back up with cold outreach, but it's hard to do it all. I work usually till 1 in the morning. I work 7 days a week.
I can see that. I can see that. And the child is doing his best to disrupt, which is what entrepreneurs do. Let's go to our questions. And as you sort that out one more time, I'll get some more questions. And again, please put your questions in the Q&A, not in the chat. They get a little hard to find when they go into the Q&A. I'm sorry, into our webinar chat. Okay. One thing that, yeah, I think one question I want to ask that I've seen you post about through like the Slack community that we're in and other things is that you've gone out and gotten investment, right? You have investors or you're seeking investors, right? So tell us about that side of entrepreneurship. Have you raised money? Are you in the process of raising money? What has that been like to grow this business?
So I've done some, I have a few family and friend investors. Then we're doing a small raise now through equity crowdfunding. And then I've had probably a dozen conversations with VCs. The funny thing is when you're trying not to raise through VCs, when you've said like, I don't, I'm going to do this with a different source of funding, like we're doing equity crowdfunding, then they all want to talk to you. So I've been getting more requests for meetings that I've taken, but I've also taken the approach that it's good to make those relationships now before I need them.
So, okay. Jennifer, how about this? If you could try to settle that for like, give us 10 more minutes. I'm going to do an exercise with students, a writing exercise. Can you try to get us to like 2 to 2:15? Can you give me that last 15 minutes? Okay. So let's take a pause. Stay with us, students, as she works that out. This is live television. And one thing I didn't mention to all of you is that previous to working in education, I was a TV reporter. And trust me, I've had plenty of moments, sometimes a little scary, on live television where you got to roll with it. And you know what? That's life too. Nothing ever goes as planned. It's how we react in the moment. Raise your hand if you agree, right? I hope we can use everything happening today as a learning opportunity. Well, I've been in some breaking news situations, shootings and crime and things that are a little tense. And that's right. We're all dealing every day with the unpredictable. So as she sorts that out and gives us some quiet as we can finish, we're going to do an exercise together that we've done in the past. We're going to do it a little earlier today. Okay. So I'm going to put up on the screen a quick writing exercise that I want the students to try. Okay. We are going to learn how to sign our names in cursive. Teachers, raise your hand if you would love to make sure your students can sign their own name before they graduate, for documents, for applications. It's a life skill. So what I'm going to do is share my screen, and from your seat, either on paper and pen or with a like on a digital screen, like a touchpad, I want you to help me with something. This is for the students, all right? Let me keep my chat open. I want you to look at right here. We're going to learn to sign our own name and give our guests a few more minutes. I want you to practice either in a touchpad or pen or pencil to write out the first letter of your first and last name, your initials. Look at the letters on the right, and I want you to write your initials. And that's okay, Matt. This is what we do here. We try to do a lot in our sessions. We usually do this a few minutes later, but we'll do it right now. So let's all write the first letter of our first and last name, and then let's fill in the rest. Take your time, practice it more than once. Thank you, Tasha. It is a life skill. It's one that we don't want students writing in block letters or in italics because they simply don't know how to sign their name. You go through your whole life not knowing because we're too afraid to ask. So let's learn today, right? And here's some examples, and I'll jump back up in a moment. So there's those interior letters, those lowercase letters. Let's continue to write that, and then give me a thumbs up or an okay in the chat when you have written your name, or the teachers, you can confirm to me the students have practiced their name. And we'll return to our conversation. This was just a little halftime. Yes, Karen says, can you show the capital letters again? No problem. Let's learn together. At our company, through our webinars and our online resources, we teach practical life skills for the business world, for the real world. And there's nothing more practical than signing your own name and recognizing that we use capital letters for our names. The first letters. Thank you, Nikita. Anybody else want to confirm? You've got it. We can jump back to our Q&A. Thank you, Skylar. See a few more of you. And then we'll know that we've learned a lesson together. Thank you, Catherine. All right, we'll come out of here. And you can continue to tell us in the chat. And again, I would encourage you to practice it a few more times. Write it out 3 times, 4 times. Get comfortable, because you will be signing your name many, many times in life. It will never go away. And you should be proud of your name. You should know how to write it. Thank you, Jacoby. Thank you, Brittany. All right. Jennifer, are you good again? Think we got you a few more minutes. We'll give it a shot.
Yep.
Okay, so you said a lot of good stuff related to the fundraising. Let's get back into that. Help students understand what it means to raise money. So the first thing you did was you raised some money with friends and family, right? Did you say that? Did I catch that? So what did that look like? You went to your...
I didn't ask my friends and family because my closest living relatives are my two aunts and my first cousin. I've had a lot of death in my family, so I don't have many family members left, but my family come to me. It's also kind of like in the startup world, the thing you're supposed to do first, go to friends and family, but I see a question in there too, like what happens if you don't have the network? Well, a lot of people don't. And that's really hard, and not everybody's family can invest. And that's what some of the the newer investors are trying to move away from, these false expectations that everybody's got this network. But what I could say is, in regards to networking for employees, and also networking in general, making more connections, whether it's or investors, you don't have to know the people. So I went to a talk, and Stan Lapidus, who is a patent creator, he's got over 60 patents. He has a lot of medical patents, but he has a bachelor's in engineering, electrical engineering. He's the only person to ever have spoken at MIT and taught at MIT without a PhD.
Wow.
But he came at this from, a completely different lens with electrical engineering, and ended up patenting in medical, right? Like, so just completely changed his track. And I really appreciated his talk and how accomplished he was and how open he was about his journey. And so after the talk, I sent him a message on LinkedIn, just asking him a question. And he came back and said, let's meet tomorrow for 15 minutes. So I didn't know him, had zero connections to him on LinkedIn.
So what did you say? What did you say in your message that made him a very busy, accomplished person? What did you say that made him write you back?
I just acknowledged how meaningful his talk was to me and how it resonated with me in terms of having been a career switcher. And I asked him, like, honestly, if there's any advice he could give to me about when it feels like people maybe don't feel like you have credibility in the new industry you're going into. So like when he was going into medical, how did he find the credibility from going from electrical engineering to that? How did he get past the naysayers? And so I just asked him a very genuine question.
Genuine question. I think that's a very important lesson for the students, that you can reach out to people you don't know, but you have to be very genuine and authentic and real and honest with them when you write them. It has to feel like a real human not a spammy message, right? A real person writing to you. And you could actually get to somebody famous or experienced, accomplished, just by being a human being. And that led you to a really important conversation with him. And what came of that conversation?
So I also want to say too, very specific question, right? Because I get in messages all the time. If it's a really vague, like, how do I do software engineering? It's like, well, all right, where do we
Where do I
start,
begin?
right?
Where do I start?
Right. So I learned just that basically he said, you have to prove yourself at first, right? So you have to get it. And he's like, there'll be certain people close to you who'll see the potential, just like those few people I reached out to, I showed it to them. And he's like, and then as you build more and more people who understand what you're doing and who believe it, it just kind of builds up. So it's that snowball effect. It's the same thing. And he said, just don't give up on what you're trying to do. And there will always be people who will disagree or say it's not possible. But he's like, those number of people will decrease over time, and you'll just keep getting more confidence as you go forward. But he also said that coming in from a different angle was what allowed him to break through and make these patents that to him seemed so obvious and that people in the industry were just completely missing for years and years.
Do you think that's like a hallmark of entrepreneurship, is to create something that to you seems very obvious and needed, but the market has just missed it on some level? But like maybe once it's in the market, people like, can't imagine living without it. But until you made it real for them, they would never have seen it. Do you think there's an aspect of that to what you're doing?
So there's that famous example with Henry Ford. Like if Henry Ford asked people what they needed, they wouldn't have said a car, they would have said faster horses. So it's important to remember when you're telling people, it's really easy to get really excited about the tech piece of it or whatever it is, the how, but people just want to know what is it going to do for them? They don't care how you're going to do it. They just want to know what is the result of the solution. So for when people were looking to get from one place to another faster, they didn't care if it was a faster horse or a car. They just wanted it to be affordable and to be fast. And so that's also something to consider. So it doesn't always have to be something really like out there, but if it is seeming like it's further ahead than where people are now, you have to be careful not to get into like the dreamer aspect and the tech part. You have to make sure you're presenting it as a solution.
A solution. I think that's what I wanted to ask you. As an entrepreneur, how important is it that you're always making sure you're solving someone's problem rather than doing something that you like, but you're not quite sure the market wants it? You have to make sure you're addressing a real need out there, right?
Yeah. So like I said, this is the fourth business that I've had. And to me, it was just second nature to the very first thing I did before I even incorporated the company, before I did the patent, before I asked anybody to join in, was to do user interviews and make sure that this was a problem that not only I saw, but that the people I was serving felt, and that they also the way, not the how that I was going to solve it, but the solution I was going to provide was something they would be willing to pay for, and pay for in a way that would be lucrative in terms of like what I was going to have to pay to make it work, right? Like, so was I going to be able to have the margins there? And a lot of people skip that part. They think, well, if I'm going to use it, that's enough. But that's where a lot of people get stuck. And I did an accelerator with a VC in Boston.
And what is a VC? What's a VC? What's a VC?
Venture capitalist.
Venture capitalist. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that we learned like in our 12 weeks of the accelerator. And I was just like, oh, I already did all that. I already did my user interviews, but it was about half the people there. And the companies had started anywhere from 6 months ago to 2 years ago. About half the people there had not done user interviews yet. And they were all panicking because the VCs made it very clear about how integral this was. Like, right, if you can't get people to agree that you're solving their problem, you don't have a business, you just have a product.
So that's a great way to put it. So I have a follow-up question for that. In a user interview, what are some questions you ask potential users in that interview?
Yeah, so there, like I said, Harvard has a really good article on this that's pretty like short and it's understandable, I'd say, at the high school level, because they have a little summary and then they have like maybe I think 12 popular questions. But you want to ask questions that aren't pointed at your technology, but more like general questions. So what are some problems that you face every day in your job? How do you solve them right now? What is that solution working for you? Why not? Like if you could do it differently, how would you do it? I'm trying to find out like what does their job entail each day, where are their problems in it right now, what have they tried, why doesn't that work, and where those gaps are. And then you say, well, if we could solve that problem, and get specific to one of the specific sub problems, they list it, by, reducing the cost, reducing the time, whatever, increasing the whatever, blah, 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 would you pay for it? And then you try to find out how much they'd pay for it. And sometimes it's based on how much they're losing by not solving the problem. And there's different things there, but generally you want to leave the questions open. You don't want to have yes, no questions. You want open-ended questions, follow up with why, and just try to give it from their perspective. It's really hard sometimes for founders not to lead. And so it's good after you do several and you have your questions down to have other people on the team do those interviews. You get much better answers if you do live interviews. If you send out surveys, you'll get like 1/8 of the amount of text that you'll get if you're talking to people.
People would rather talk it out than have to type a huge paragraph to you. So you're going to get that real, that honest answer. How would you encapsulate the problem you solve? Like when you're, pitching this, selling it, marketing it, what is your quick pitch on like what need we address?
Yeah, so it's being able to scale a class while still providing personalized feedback to every single client in a way that you can actually increase their performance and decrease injuries.
That's a good tight couple of lines. And do you think that the pandemic really made this business model possible because people are more willing to, learn virtually from a person in a physical space or have that combo? Like, would this even have been possible, or the market even wanted this prior to 2020?
Yeah, so I launched in August of 2020, but it's a pre-pandemic idea. Actually, in January, the pandemic hit in March.
Yeah.
Because of myself trying to get back to the gym with kids. And while I was, after I went to grad school, I went back to school for biochemistry. And while I was doing that, I did yoga instruction and personal training. And so having that experience from that side and then trying to get back into the gym and work it out with scheduling and commuting and traffic and childcare, it's like, there's just too much chaos with this. And there weren't good solutions. Like I grew up with, my grandfather had the Tybo videos. We'd pop them into the VHS.
Yeah, remember that.
There's no feedback though. And I was like, how do we still have that, but just on the computer? Like, okay, you watch a YouTube video, but there's still no feedback. Like we have to have made progress in all this time. But if you look at companies like Peloton, they've already proven that people were willing to work out from home.
Yes.
Right. That was pre-pandemic too.
Yep.
But the problem is they cut out the interaction with trainers. So they sold directly to consumers and they have about 15 trainers for, the millions of clients that they had. At least like that was like when I think that was about a year and a half ago when they were reporting that many trainers. But again, there's not those individual like one-on-one relationships.
Yeah.
So they kind of cut out that.
That's true.
That central piece.
Wow. So yeah, you're trying to target another sector of the market, people who want that one-on-one component, but they could do it from home. So I think it's an interesting approach that seems like you've already validated in the market. And now you just have to sort of lock down the technology and go start lining up some customers. Is that sort of where you are in the process?
Well, we launched in October of last year in beta, and we had 40,000 in sales for last year.
Awesome.
So working on some big partnerships right now.
Yep.
One of them, we just agreed on pricing last night, actually at 11 o'clock at night or something.
How it works.
But they have thousands of clients that themselves have tens of thousands of clients. So it's a pretty big
that would be wonderful.
Integrate with an API. So they want to white label it.
Okay. And white labeling means that they would market it as themselves, but use your technology. And that's why the patent is so important, because if you can sort of lock down your technology, you can sell your tech and others can use it.
Right. And then we have more people selling for us in a way.
Right. You can scale it.
Yeah.
So we understand, everybody's still with us. We understand what she's talking about. Getting the patent on the technology, this motion tracking is so important because then others would take it and run with it, no pun intended. And her company can get paid for the use of the technology. Many companies do that, where you sell sort of your product under someone else's name. And it doesn't matter if MotivateU is the name everybody knows. The fact is she's in business and she's profitable, and is selling this and getting it to the end user the way she had hoped. So there's a lot of different ways to approach an entrepreneurial project or a startup. And this is I think it's just a great case study because you're going through all of it. It's punishing some days, it's hard, the patent process, the investment, the development, it's hard. Explain to students that, some days you probably are like, this is gonna knock me down, but you keep getting up, right? I mean, I'm seeing you today, you're kind of managing your universe is really crazy. So how do you get up every day and just keep chipping away at this?
Yeah, so there's this internet meme that, startup founders, it's like a roller coaster. And sometimes that happens, like you go up and down the roller coaster 5 times a day. And so behind my computer on my wall, I have like an old school vision board, meaning it's actual stuff I've cut out from magazines and posted to the wall. But I also have one on my phone. So if there's something I don't find in a magazine, I'll get the picture online and then I put it in an album on my phone. And so every night before I go to sleep, I write down what I'm grateful for. I then go and look at all of my goals that I have written down, and I have hundreds of them because I have them sub broken down. So I have my large life goal and then all my sub goals. And then when I achieve it, I check it off, but I don't delete it. Because then when I go through reading my goals, I look at, hey, look at all I've already done. Look at all this stuff I've already accomplished. And then after I do that, I look at my vision board that's on my phone or on my wall. And so I'm kind of wrapping myself up in that, this is why I'm doing this.
Love it. Every day, sort of reminding yourself what this is for, why you're in this fight, and why you got to get up every day and just keep, pushing that boulder up the mountain, which I understand. And I appreciate the fight that you're fighting for your own business. Stay with us just a few more minutes. Okay, Jennifer, don't run off just yet. I want to, for those who missed it at the jump, the instructors, we offered at the beginning a free Google Drive folder of job interview preparation activities. Want to offer it one more time in case you missed it. All the techniques and tricks and best practices for researching the company, reaching out for interviews, asking questions, answering their questions, writing a thank you note. We'd love to give it to you to pass along to your students, to your department, to your CTE program, to your building, whatever it is. We want you to take these lessons and spread them around. So I'll tell you how to get that in a second, and a one-page online presentation checklist of how to do a great job in a virtual presentation. Many students will have those coming up this spring, summer, and then into next year, of course. If you would like these resources and don't have them yet, please go to the chat right now, type the word interested and your email address. And if you are new to our community, we love to chat for 5 minutes on the phone, help you make sense of this material, understand what class it's going into. We can't talk in this environment, it's too difficult. So please request it, and we will send an invitation to your calendar this afternoon. If the time is not good, you can write us back or reply back with a new time, and we'll switch it. We want to stay on your schedule. Finally, in 2 weeks' time, we are going to be talking to 2 gentlemen who work in the back office of 2 professional sports teams. On Tuesday, April 5th, Major League Baseball and the NBA. So please join us in early April for that conversation. We'd love to have you there. And also any students and teachers who are with us live today, we will send you the certificate for being here. That'll come out tomorrow morning in your email. Look out for that. And finally, if you're watching us on a recording, email us at the email in red and use the subject line you see, and we will send you the job interview resources that way so you can have them as well. I want to come back to center, thank our guest for battling through everything happening in her environment. I thought she shared some excellent advice, and and there he's back. It would have to be that way to wrap up. So I want to thank her for being here. Students, show of hands if you're able to take some good knowledge away from today's conversation. She really is in the thick of it. Right? I mean, she is a battle-tested entrepreneur, and she gave us an insight into many of the challenges that you'll face. But does that mean you should not try? Students, should you still give it a shot as hard as it is? As difficult as the odds might be to succeed, should you still try? I think so, and I hope you think so, because you never know what's around that next corner. You never know what that product might do for someone else's life. And it's worth that battle every day in the purpose of trying to make a difference out there in the world. So we'll leave her on mute. And I want to just thank her for her time. Thank you for your time and your patience. And we look to see you in 2 weeks for sports executive virtual internship. Thank you, Ms. Kelly Greer, as well. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Have a great afternoon, everybody.